Okay, moving onwards now. I'm going to bring on Ray Finch. Ray isn't talking about the item mentioned in the programme here. He's going to talk to you all about foreign policy post-Brexit. Ray Finch.
How am I going to follow Stuart? That's just going to be the best speech I have ever heard in my life. I shall never look at a badger again the same way. Yeah. Well, so, good afternoon, fellow patriots. How are you? Yeah? I'm a happy bunny, I must say. Been a lively one today, hasn't it? And now you lucky, lucky people, you get to listen to me. It just gets better, doesn't it? As you're now aware, obviously, I am now the Foreign Affairs spokesman, so I won't be boring you about fish anymore. However, I haven't checked with Henry whether I still am. I may by this evening be in charge of the washing up. But I am in a uniquely lucky position as this portfolio gives me literally a whole world of things I can talk about. However, you've probably had enough of listening about our future relationship with the EU, so there goes one consonant. Let's see. Antarctica. Nope. There goes another consonant. South America. Nope. Oh, well. Looks like I'm going to be down to the Isle of Wight soon. And with the cuts to our armed forces by the Tories, I doubt if we can impose our will over there very easily either. So, the opportunities coming from our eventual Brexit, and it will happen, however Theresa May tries to screw it up, they're manifold. However, this must not solely be about trade, although leaving the EU does obviously open the door to the Wales markets in a way the customs union specifically forbids. But it can and should be about remaking the United Kingdom as a force for good and a force for civilization in the world. Now, since the Second World War, we've become more and more dependent, first upon America, and then on what's now the EU, on other nations using us as their vehicles for foreign policy. Now, this can and must end. For far too long, we've been, willingly or otherwise, dragged along in other nations' conflicts. From Korea to the Balkans and Libya, we've been one more division in someone else's army. And in fact, in my opinion, Harold Wilson's refusal to join in with Vietnam was probably the wisest foreign policy decision of any post-war Prime Minister. I can see it on my telly here. Here's an idea. Why don't we be a force for peace? A nation that can, with its unparalleled history and communications, particularly through the Commonwealth and the Anglosphere, act as a bridge between nations. Now, we understand, because of our history, both the good, and it's mostly been good, and the bad, that you cannot bomb a country into democracy. You must lead by example and by good faith. We can, now we're freed of the yoke of the EU, and now that the US is pursuing a less interventionist foreign policy under President Trump, we can be a free and independent United Kingdom that can act as an honest broker. We hopefully will have free, or nearly so, trade agreements with much of the world. We have historical ties to much of the world. We speak the most widely spoken language, and we have, in the Commonwealth, the most disparate of all the world groups. The United Kingdom is uniquely placed to act for the good of all mankind. We can be the peacemakers. Let's think for a moment about what a free and independent UK can do. We're the 5th largest economy in the world. We should be working towards as free a system of trade with the world as there has been in modern times. Free trade brings peace, with all its attendants, humanitarian and economic benefits. Protectionism only brings conflict. We're a small group of islands on the route between the European landmass and the Americas. Our seas are mostly our borders. Our Foreign and Commonwealth Office is more experienced than any other nation's foreign service. Don't forget how a quarter of the world was run from some very small offices. These are all favourable leverage points to make our nation great again. Not in the expansionist, neo-colonialist way that the EU envisages it for itself, but as a beacon of fairness and equality. A nation that becomes great again by trading fairly and as equals with the world, not a huddled landmass trying to repel all borders with restrictive and unfair trade rules. I've spoken in a previous speech, which I'm sure you all remember. You better had. About how the EU leaves African nations dependent on aid by tariff barriers such as the ones for coffee and cocoa, which means that Africa has crippling taxes on the export of processed goods and little on raw materials, so that European nations make the big profits, and Africans are left as little more than serfs working the land for big European conglomerates. So why don't we as a nation, with this opportunity, reverse this and help the third world get on its feet by helping in with investments rather than despoiling their natural resources? Let's allow Africa to wean itself off the narcotic of aid and stand on its own 2 feet. I realise this isn't my normal raise the roof off thing, but I think it's important this time. Let's be a partner for the world, the friend who'll deal fairly, the neighbour who is not looking covetously at your property, but who understands by helping each other the cake gets bigger, and who knows that a fire in your house will soon enough spread to mine, so helping our neighbours to put it out quickly is better for all of us. There's nothing that will get rid of evil, violent dictators like Robert Mugabe as simply as allowing their people to become economically free and prosperous, or alternatively, seeing their neighbours become so. So while their own government's rapacious corporatist theft makes their own nation fall farther behind, we know that the issues with migration are aggravated to an extent by the policies of the developed world. I personally would not blame anyone for trying to get to a richer place where they can live a better, safer life. You or I would do exactly the same in their position. Therefore, the way to control the wish for migration is to help to make the migrants' homelands a better place to live. We must use diplomacy, trade, defensive policies to achieve this. We understand the few people want to be uprooted from their own homeland and culture. But sometimes, when starvation and savagery are at your door, you have no option. So, leaving aside Angela Merkel's foolish, suicidal open doors policy, which only exacerbates all these problems, we need to, as a nation, try to calm the furies, spread fair and free trading, make investment in poorer nations easier and safer, give people a chance to build a better life at home. It is a big job, but someone's got to do it. Why not us? I haven't finished, by the way. You're not getting away that easy. Let's think about what happens. Just one quick example. Just this week, the French bank, BNP Paribas, or Paribas, however you want to pronounce it, I'm not French, has had an investigation opened in France regarding allegations it helped to transfer funds used to buy 80 tons of weapons by a Rwandan general that broke the UN embargo and helped to arm the perpetrators of the 1994 Rwandan massacre that saw 15% of the entire population murdered in 100 days. That's not what we want for our future. That causes migration, that causes unhappiness, that makes the world a less safe place. If the United Kingdom is going to be the partner for all, then we need to ensure that we have clean hands. We can then talk to nations with our economic muscle and diplomatic skills and use this influence to actually help people and thereby help ourselves. There was a study last month that put the UK again near the top of the so-called soft power league table. Now, Brexit gives us a chance to improve this. It shows we have a solid foundation to build upon. The future for our nation is global. And now that we are no longer... Do you want to borrow that? Now that we're no longer enmeshed, in the EU's land grab manoeuvres in southern and central Europe, perhaps we can cool the war of worlds between the EU and Russia before it escalates into something much, much worse. The fact that we never put boots on the ground in Syria, something which UKIP and Nigel Farage campaigned against, will help us broker some form of peace there. Look back at Libya, a conflict that the damp rag himself, Herman Van Rompuy, claimed was due to the EU starting the process that led to this catastrophe that now envelops that poor nation. The catastrophe that was Bosnia and the current lunacy regarding the Ukraine shows clearly that the EU is still in the conference division regarding democracy, while the United Kingdom is in the Premiership. And our regaining of sovereignty will give us the opportunity to show it again. UKIP stood against the intervention in Libya because we knew there was no sensible endgame in sight. Let the UK, whenever possible, stay out of direct military intervention and instead play the role of peacemaker. Let us have a seat at peace talks, not because of how many divisions we committed, but because we committed no divisions and therefore have clean hands. Now, our armed forces punch well above their weight in any conflict, but I am sick and tired of seeing our brave men and women's bodies being landed back at Royal Wootton Bassett from places they should never have been sent by cowardly politicians who want their own war on their own dirty CVs. Sorry about that. I got a bit emotional. Our overstretched military is signed up to protect our nation. Let us fund and pay them properly and let them get on with the job they're paid to do. Defend the United Kingdom and its citizens. Of course, we can always use this, military budgets to enable them to be more effective in humanitarian disaster relief operations, something that was stymied by EU rules in the recent Caribbean hurricane disaster, but something that will bring admiration from other people who see the free, unforced cooperation is the future for us all, rather than foreign aid rules that make squander and outright theft commonplace. Thank you. Just checking if the red button had gone off yet. There are many reasons why UKIP is not, as our enemies in the politics and the media wish to say, finished, job done, in the words of Douglas Carswell, a former MP. He may well be finished and his job is certainly over, but ours is not. One of the big reasons, outside of the obvious fact that the Tories will try to sell the British people out on Brexit without us standing at the door, is that we are, and have been for many years, the only major UK party with a sane and ethical foreign policy. We've always campaigned on the sensible humanitarian course. No pointless wars. Keep the United Kingdom safe. The other major parties have been too busy trying to be big players on the world stage and consequently have helped cause catastrophes, both economic and humanitarian. Whilst conducting this course, they've also given us millions of enemies around the world. We have, in the past, been a force for peace. Our post-war idealism saw us and others work together to bring peace and prosperity to a troubled and traumatised world. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, we had the opportunity to shape world events. But for various reasons we all know only too well, we frittered away our power and influence, the consequences of which are the insecurity and terror we live through today. So let's use our power at the UN to be a force for good. Let's use our status on the Security Council to ask the difficult questions, to tackle the real problems that threaten the livelihoods and futures of the British people and the people of the world. Let's use our privileged position to transform the politics and economies of the developing world so that there is no need for people to uproot themselves and their families in search of safety and a living wage. You see, we can do this. We can follow this course as we are now free to do what is right and what is best for Britain. Compare what UKIP are saying to Theresa May's blustering in the UN recently. And when people like Tony Blair drag us into wars on dodgy pretexts with dodgy dossiers, this doesn't strengthen the UK on the world stage. I'll be gone in a second. It makes us look weak and stupid. The right thing is to work for peace and ignore the silent voices of warmongers. When was the last time a Prime Minister's child went to war? I guarantee none of Blair's Majors or Cameron's, but they think it okay to send our young people. And as for the Labour MP who criticised Prince Harry, she epitomises everything that is now wrong with the party of Attlee. Last page, I promise. Our bravest must be celebrated and honoured, not abused by people who despise everything that we stand for. We have now, as a nation, a historic opportunity, a chance to make the UK once again a first-level power on the world stage. We won't do it with guns. We can do it with our words and our actions. The UK is trusted worldwide in a way no other nation is or possibly can be. We must seize the opportunity with both hands and make the world a better place, not just for ourselves and our children, but for everybody. When we can do that and show that our nation is again a beacon of civilization, then nations will once more want to emulate us. Thank you, my friends.